Welcome to the NJ Axe Team Science virtual seminar series, sponsored by the NJ Axe Team Science Core. My name is Dr. Dan Horton, and I'm joined by Dr. Nancy Reichman and Dr. Ralph Gelati. We're the co-leads of the NJ Axe Team Science Core, and are very excited that you've joined us today for this virtual seminar. As you might be aware from seeing our other seminars, our series features biomedical research teams and leaders from across the NJ-ACTS Consortium who are conducting high-impact, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, or transdisciplinary research with a focus on projects supported by large grants from either federal or foundation sources. So we ask our guests to provide a high-level overview about their teams and their projects, and then to speak about different aspects of team-based research so we can learn from their successes and any challenges that they've overcome. So I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Ralph Gelati to introduce today's distinguished guests.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us for this conversation today. It's my pleasure to introduce our two guests. I'll introduce them briefly and then hand it over to them for their remarks and some Q&A. First, we have Dr. Danielle Dick, who serves as director for the Rutgers Addiction Research Center, along with professor at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. And Dr. Dick's research focuses on how genetic and environmental influences contribute to the development of patterns of substance use and related behaviors, such as child behavioral and emotional challenges, and how we can use that information to inform prevention and intervention. And we also have joining us Dr. Tammy Chung. Dr. Chung serves as director for the Center for Population Behavioral Health and professor of psychiatry at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. And Dr. Chung's research focuses on adolescent and young adult substance use, assessment and diagnosis, clinical course, and intervention. We're thrilled to have you both here, thrilled to learn from your team science project, and I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us here. I am going to get started with sharing my slides. Okay, are those showing up in the proper format for you all?
Yes.
Great. Well, it's a joy to get to talk with you all here today, and I'm going to be presenting on a project that's really kind of in its early stages. I do lead a number of big grants and national and international collaborations that are funded largely by NIH. But what I'm going to be talking about today is really kind of our efforts to get a new initiative off the ground. So it's really at a different stage than many of the other projects and initiatives that I know have been covered over the course of this series before. And so what I'm going to be talking about is an effort to bring together a group of researchers who hadn't worked together previously to essentially bring all of our expertise to lay the foundation for a P50 center grant application. And so the theme of this center and the grant that we are working on putting together right now is an integrated approach to build precision medicine for substance use disorders. So substance use disorders represent a tremendous burden. Virtually every one of us who is watching this today is been touched in some way, whether it's personally or through our family members, through friends, colleagues, coworkers. And one of the really challenging pieces of working in this field is that despite the magnitude of the problem, there's really low treatment uptake and success. And so only about 10 to 20%, at best, of people with substance use disorders even receive treatment. Return to use rates are really high. It usually takes multiple attempts and multiple rounds of treatment before an individual might be able to maintain recovery. And part of the reason that this is thought to be the case is that substance use disorders very widely. And so individuals who have diagnosed substance use disorders can be quite different from one another in terms of their severity, in terms of what symptoms they manifest, in terms of what kinds of comorbid conditions there are, whether they have depression or whether they have multiple substance use disorders. And this heterogeneity is likely influenced by differences in underlying genetics, neural factors, environmental factors. And so the idea behind precision medicine, as I know many folks here probably work on in their own respective areas, is that we can essentially harness everything that we're learning and really the new big data techniques that are available to us to move medicine from a sort of one size fits all treatment based model to one that is more personalized, predictive, and preventative. And so, really, what we're working on here is creating a personalized, multidisciplinary approach to try and better understand substance use disorder risk profiles and how those might be differentially associated with treatment outcomes. So I'm going to step back and give you a little bit of background behind, how this group came together to focus on this topic. And, Rutgers has obviously undergone tremendous growth over the last decade. Rutgers Health has been established. There's been the partnership with our, Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health System. And as part of all of these mergers, one of the new centers, which I've had the privilege of coming to Rutgers to build and lead that has emerged, is the Rutgers Addiction Research Center. And so we have tremendous expertise in addiction studies. We have over 150 faculty who are doing work that's related to addiction. And this really spans the whole translational spectrum from basic scientists, so neuroscientists, genetics, individuals who are studying epidemiology, etiology, kind of developmental patterns, to individuals who are studying treatment and recovery and policy. And the idea behind the Rutgers Addiction Research Center is how do you bring together all of these researchers to create community and to be able to do impactful research that is more than we could do in our kind of own particular, more specialized areas? And so this P50 grant is something that's really growing out of this new Rutgers Addiction Research Center community. So the overarching aims of the pilot center are to characterize heterogeneity among individuals who are seeking substance use disorder treatment using these, by looking at complex clinical profiles as well as genomics and neuroimaging data. We want to test the predictive power of clinical, behavioral, environmental, genomic, neuroimaging to really characterize how those things influence treatment response and relapse. In addition, and work in a project being led by Tammy, we're going to be looking at how innovative digital data collection tools can support positive treatment outcomes. And then really what we want to do is to also better understand whether personalized feedback about some of these underlying risk factors and our ability to really do cutting edge things in terms of understanding somebody's genomics, brain signature, digital phenotypes. Can we use this information to feed it back to individuals to help them better either seek treatment if they're kind of in the early stages of maybe being at risk, or to have better treatment outcomes? And then we're also capitalizing on our neuroscience community. So the idea is that out of the genomics and imaging projects, we'll have genes and circuits that are involved in addiction and in treatment response that will emerge. And then what we can do is take those into animal models to try and functionally validate some of these genes and circuits and better understand the underlying biology of treatment response. So this actually breaks down, I'll tell you a little bit about how it's also evolved over the course of our year plus working together. So we originally imagined 4 different projects. And so one project would be focused on genomics. So the idea is that we can collect saliva samples from individuals who are treatment, we can scan the genome, and we can create genetic risk scores for liability toward substance use problems, specific types of substance use disorders, broad risk factors for things like maybe even depression or other mental health challenges. We can look at how those different genomic profiles might predict treatment response. We're going to have a project on neuroimaging where we'll collect both structural and functional MRI data to study brainwave activity as individuals are going through treatment and look at how that is corresponding to their treatment course and outcomes. We'll have a third project on digital phenotyping. And so the idea is to collect daily data from patients. Maybe Tammy can talk more about this even if folks are interested, using ecological momentary assessment. So collecting these kind of short surveys daily to look at their use, their urges, their mood, and to be able to think about, can we use that to deliver perhaps more real-time treatments instead of this, you're checking in every so often with your clinician to do those sorts of patterns, predict treatment outcome, and then can we use that to do more real-time interventions? And then the last project was this animal model project. Although what we as a team just met earlier this week for a couple hours over dinner to really flesh out. We've been collecting data for about a year now, and meeting regularly. And now we're at the point where we want to use what we know to think about, should we refine as we go in for this big center grant? And what we've decided is to take the animal model project and instead turn it into a core, so that what we're learning across the 3 human projects could be fed into this functional validation core using animal models. So just one example of kind of how our thinking has evolved as we've actually started working together. So the aims of this pilot grant, because essentially what we got funding from the Chancellor's office to bring together this group of individuals to start working together to establish working relationships so that we can essentially show that we have a history of working together to be able to more successfully compete for these P50 Center of Excellence funds. And so the aims for this pilot application were that we wanted to establish a pipeline for recruiting patients. And we essentially were thinking of this as an addiction research registry. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So we needed to set up a pipeline to recruit patients to then be funneled into these different projects. So our second aim being to collect phenotypic, genotypic, neuroimaging, and digital phenotypes from patients who were in treatment to serve as pilot data. We then wanted to establish a process for taking results from our human studies and feeding them into the model organism work. We wanted to establish aim 4, processes for data management and sharing and integrative data analysis. Aim 5, what we really needed to show is that we have a history of working together and collaborating together, that we aren't just kind of, all lone soldiers over here saying we're going to do these things, but we can actually show that we've been functioning as a team. And then our last aim was really to start identifying early career investigators whose research aligns with these overarching themes of the center so that we could put in a pilot core and also include some sample pilots as well. And so, in a sense, I'm kind of talking both about the big center application that we're going to be putting together, but also what we have been doing with this grant that we got from these funds that we got from the Chancellor's office to establish this working group to be able to put in the center grant. So I'm going to talk for a minute about our rationale for creating this, what we now call the Research Community Partnership. And this is the idea that, often as researchers, we're siloed into our own departments and our own areas of research, but we are often also sometimes siloed from the practitioners and from the patients that ultimately we're hoping our research will benefit. And so, what we're really trying to do with the research community partnership is create a collaborative process between our researchers and our clinical providers. And we're starting first with our treatment centers that are affiliated with Rutgers through the University Behavioral Health Care. And then what we also wanted to do was to offer these opportunities for our Rutgers patient community to participate in research. So essentially, we wanted to connect researchers with the practitioners, researchers with the patients. We wanted both for it to be useful for the researchers, but what we also wanted was that it would be beneficial to the clinicians and to the patients as well. And so what we're really doing is setting it up in a way that it'll be bi-directional in terms of the research feeding back into the clinics and to the patients and the clinicians having an opportunity to really be a part of the research team and contribute to what we hope will be really cutting edge research. And so, we really established through a community engaged approach. So we collaborated with UBHC leadership as well as peer recovery specialists, so leadership at Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas. We've put that recruitment on for that one as secondary. We haven't started that part yet. We started with UBHC, where there's more of our substance use treatment centers. And we really met with the team to get feedback about here are some of our ideas for how to implement. How should we, update what will work with you all? And so it was really a collaborative process. And in fact, one of the things that came out of those conversations is we were calling it a research registry. And several of the individuals with lived experience were saying, like, registry is something that really has negative connotations, especially for individuals with substance use disorders, because nobody wants to end up on registries. There's obviously, because of substance use challenges, there can be, involvement with the criminal justice system, and registries have bad connotations. And so we thought, well, gosh, that never occurred to us, and that's not what we're trying to achieve. And so we came up with this idea of calling it the Research Community Partnership. And so what we do is we invite our patients to enroll. The RARC administers the partnership. And when individuals enroll, they are essentially agreeing to be contacted by approved researchers to participate in projects. There's no obligation. They can accept or decline any given project. They have the option of checking a box and having their healthcare records shared with the researchers. And then what we do is we partnered with our clinicians for them to introduce this opportunity to patients. And then we also bring members of our research team in to some of the, free time and the outpatient groups and whatnot to talk about the research and to sort of put a face to our team as well, too. And we set this all up to enroll online. Here's a little bit of kind of like what it looks like when folks go to sign up. And so we tried to make it very user friendly. And then they kind of have a dashboard where it's like you've signed up for the registry. Do you want to share your health records? Do you want to complete some additional surveys to tell us more about you, which can increase the likelihood of being selected for various studies? If, for example, a study was looking for individuals who were smokers, for example, that would allow us to kind of select out certain participants. And then when they complete it, they can, you get a nice little check mark here. And this is just an example of some of the survey modules, which are short, that individuals can fill out to essentially provide some baseline data, which is then made available to all of the researchers kind of across this project. And they can see when they've, completed certain modules and return. And then we worked with the clinicians and some of the patients to put together these, brochures to explain what it is. And we have them sitting essentially in the lounges and in the welcome packets and whatnot for all of the patients. So our target was for this project to launch this and then start recruiting individuals through our substance use treatment centers at UVHC. We were doing it through our outpatient facilities via their clinical providers, using some of these methods I just talked about, the flyers, we've been on site there, et cetera. So our goal was to enroll 20 participants to go through all three parts of the project. So really what we want to show is we could set this up, we can get folks to sign up for it, and we can get folks to complete, a saliva sample, go through a neuroimaging protocol, which actually has 2 sessions in the MRI, and to do these daily, digital collections for a shortened period of time. So, that's well underway. We anticipate completing it in the next couple months. We certainly had some challenges. I'm happy to talk about those too, if folks are interested. But, it's,
Ask you a question, a quick question.
yeah, sure,
Is there
Nancy.
any compensation for participants? Because it seems like a lot is being asked from them.
Absolutely. So there's compensation for participating in each one of these parts of the project. And individuals don't have to participate in all of them. And so, for example, it's pretty easy the genomics component, it's pretty easy to spit in a tube. It takes a couple minutes, you drool in a tube. It's a lot more time consuming to come in for a neuroimaging procedure, which could take, an hour or two. I don't actually know exactly how long on average they're taking. But so there's far more compensation for participating in the imaging component. Tammy can maybe talk some about the digital phenotyping component as well too. So yes, there's compensation, and there is compensation, obviously that was all IRB approved, commensurate with the time commitment for each of these three pieces. So we're currently working on this Center of Excellence application. And, as I mentioned, we revised our original idea. We're now going to have the 3 human projects that are all going to be recruiting through our treatment center community partnership. And then we'll have these 4 research cores, which will centralize the data collection, the data integration, so bringing together the imaging genomics and all those digital phenotypic data. So those will be led by individuals with expertise in computational psychiatry, machine learning, et cetera. We'll have our functional validation, our animal core, to take those genes and circuits and try and understand what they're doing for developing and identifying pharmaceutical targets. And then our translational core to ensure that everything we're doing with, patients, family members, treatment providers, administrators at these treatment centers, so we can be thinking about how are our findings actually going to be able to be disseminated and implemented in treatment settings. So our timeline right now is that, we've been collecting data and really started our regular meetings for the last year or so. And I'll mention that each of these project areas is bringing together essentially PIs who are leading different centers, as you heard from our introductions, and so bringing in different expertise. And so this first year was really about, like, let's all start meeting regularly. Let's have our students meet one another. We meet every other Monday. Let's get to know each other. Let's brainstorm together. And Tammy can speak to this as well too, but I think it's been a lot of fun. And as evidenced by the fact that what we have is, so for our neuroimaging project, we have the director of our Center for Advanced Human Brain Imaging and several of the faculty there. They're leading that. We have for our genomics center, there's several of us for our genomics project. There's a genomics center. There's several of us associated with that. Where Tammy leads a center, and she's brought together other faculty who are doing digital health, right? We're bringing in the Center for Computational Psychiatry for our Data Integration Center. We're bringing in our neuroscience, our Brain Health Institute for our functional validation component. So these are all, we're actually, bringing in another center director to kind of oversee the community engagement translational piece of things. So we really think we're capitalizing on a lot of the pockets of expertise that exist here and bringing this whole group together to show, look what we can do by all coming together. So now what we're doing is, after having collected data, learned about some of our challenges, some of the things that are going well that aren't, we refined our project ideas. We just did this big kickoff, meeting earlier this week where we talked through all those ideas, refined them some more, decided on our projects and our cores with the idea that we're going to have an overview in the next month or so that we're going to circulate to other external reviewers. So scientists who are leading P50s at other institutions to kind of review the ideas, give their feedback. We'll then take that, refine and update as needed, and then move to putting together the full project text, the grant text. We're then going to send that out and have external reviewers read through that as well, refine, integrate with the assuming that NIH continues to have center grants in the way it has in the past, with the hopeful submission of a September Center of Excellence. So I just want to end by acknowledging that, I get the fun opportunity to stand here and talk about this group, but really here are, many of the amazing folks who've been a part of this initiative and coming together. So I will stop there and am happy to open it up to your questions.
Danielle, are you responding to a specific P opportunity or a more general, all comers kind of RFA?
So NIDA puts out every year it's a once a year call for a Center of Excellence application. So we're going to be applying to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and one of the things, candidly, that we're just talking through and mulling over right now is, what is the best fit within NIDA? Because, the institute is broken up into branches, but because we're spanning both, several areas, genomics, imaging, these actually usually have different program officers that manage, each of these kind of areas, digital health, genomics, and as well as treatment over here. That's kind of a whole different group of folks. And so even thinking about, I think this can be one of the challenges of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary work is sometimes thinking about some of our systems are still set up for, like checking boxes and having things grouped within areas. So we're right now trying to figure out, and I'm going to be emailing program officers to think about where within NIDA this might be the best fit.
Thank you.
I have a couple little questions. Are all the players on your team, are they all at Rutgers 100%?
They are, yes. And so we have been intentional in that I'm actually a part of several other centers of excellence where, I'm a Rutgers component, but they are housed other places. And so this was intentional in let's capitalize on the expertise that we have here to have a Rutgers Center of Excellence that really showcases and takes advantage of all the tremendous growth in addiction and all the recruitments and all the investment in these centers in a way that, I think we really have the opportunity to put together and the expertise just here at Rutgers to do something really excellent. Tammy, feel free to jump in and add to this too.
Danielle, you're doing a fantastic job. So, I don't think that I have much to add to what you've already said. And, I think that you've done a great summary of what we've done, of what you put together so far, actually, and I really just want to express my gratitude to you as the director of the RARC. Again, the pandemic just really did a number on all of us, I think, and you captured it well. when you said that a lot of us tend to operate kind of in isolation, and the pandemic really exacerbated that. And then you came in kind of like a force of nature, and really brought us in a lot of ways together. And I have to say that it was refreshing, it was inspiring, and it was much needed community that you really brought together. And I think that part of it was for me this opportunity brought together with the Chancellor's Fund of this precision medicine initiative in addictions research. Danielle, I have to say, so I was approached to do this team science thing, and the project that leapt to mind was this project. Why? Because it was the most exciting thing that I've been involved with since I've come to Rutgers, Danielle. The opportunity to really be involved in the kinds of research that you've put together, as you've said, something that spans brain imaging, genetics, digital health, animal models. Are you kidding me? I was just like, this is amazing. I do have to say I had a lot of trouble with the animal models and where they would fit. I kept wanting to like push that away. But that was something I have to say was also an opportunity to be really creative and to just kind of, for me, to stretch, how is that going to work in with the other projects? And I have to say that, coming out of that discussion that we had earlier this week, I was like, wow, that's really interesting how we all as a group came together, I think under your leadership, with a solution. And that solution might change over time, as it has changed over the year as we work together. But I really like the solution that we have right now of using the animal model as kind of a functional validation. I mean, and it's really focused on the genes and brain circuits. And I think that this whole center is kind of taking shape in a very interesting way. So thanks so much for bringing us all together, Danielle.
Tammy gives me way too much credit, but be like, why wouldn't you want to be involved in a group of people?
That's what I'm saying, Danielle. And you're absolutely right. It's really been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of people that I would never be talking to Chris Pierce doing animal research, and he's such a great guy. I've learned so much. It's really been fantastic, and what a great opportunity. So.
If I could pick up on that for a moment, because it was sort of reflects the question I was going to ask. I think what you've just offered, Danielle, and then in your summary, Tammy, highlights so many of the themes we've been hearing in these talks. The critical role of having a mechanism for collaboration and coordination, the joy that it can bring teams when it's going right, and the fun that can be had when we're working together in pursuit of some shared goals, the need to sort of adapt to an ever shifting institutional and environmental landscape, which I think you commented on. And I'm wondering if you could reflect on, as you think about sort of bringing together folks from across disciplines, such as what you're doing here, where are the potential roadblocks that you might be mindful of that other teams can learn from as you're structuring a project of this kind?
Yeah. And honestly, my response, and then I'm interested in what Tammy has to say too. My response is probably going to be based on not just my role within this project, but as I mentioned, I'm involved in probably 4 other NIH grants that are also massive, that are even much bigger, right? Big consortia involving people at many sites and around the world. And before coming to Rutgers, I led a university center at my previous university, and then I came here to lead, the Rutgers Addiction Research Center. So working in teams and groups is, as you can see, something that I absolutely love. And I'm trained originally as a psychologist. I've been in both schools of medicine, and I've been in arts and sciences departments. And one of the things that I've clearly gravitated back toward a school of medicine is because really the opportunity to do these kinds of cross-department, cross-disciplinary, obviously that can happen at many places across the university. I'm also co-chairing a task force coming out of with a co-chair from the Fran Conway's office, right, at Rutgers, New Brunswick. So I don't mean to imply it only happens in medical centers, but the idea of bringing together lots of folks to do something exciting that we can't do on our own is, it directly stems from my own area of research where genomics, you can't study substance use disorders, you can't do genetics on your own, you need millions of people. That requires people around the world. You can't just study genes, you have to study the environment. That requires collaborations, et cetera. So that's all the exciting parts. You asked about the challenges. I sometimes say that I find this is more related to the RARC and why I decided to take this position at Rutgers, that to run a successful center, it really takes a trifecta. It takes there being support from leadership that you're going to prioritize this particular area, right? So if Rutgers was not interested in addiction and recruiting in addiction and being known for being excellent in addiction, like that's a big roadblock. There have to be resources to support that, depending on what you're going to do. In the case of the University Center, we're recruiting new faculty. The Chancellor's Office has been very generous in supporting that growth. And in addition, in giving us funding to bring people together to create, collect this pilot data to lay the foundation for this center. Centers aren't successful if you can't show that this team has already worked together. So that was, really key, and we're really grateful for it. And then the last piece is that it takes faculty who actually want to work together. And I think you can't underestimate the importance of that. As we sometimes like to joke, leading faculty is like herding cats or whatnot. So I instead think of it as, how do you create an environment, an opportunity that people will be excited about wanting to be a part of? Is it, are our meetings enjoyable and are they fun? And are they productive? Are they, efficient? Is the science exciting to folks? I'm talking about the positive things, but I think we've all been a part of teams where when those things are not present, I think that's a real challenge to get everybody on board. And so I I think of it as like, how do we create the conditions to make it work? And I think it's part of the reason I came to Rutgers is because I saw those three pieces. And so hence then leading something like this P50 Center and reaching out to all these amazing folks like Tammy and saying, hey, what do you think about doing this? And everyone just jumped on board with enthusiasm. So and that I can't take any credit for, really, right? That is about finding the right people. And sometimes, sometimes some people are not a great fit and they want to just stay in their lab and be great. And that's fine too, right? There's space for that in academia. But if you try and I think kind of force those things, those can lead to challenges. And I don't like it's more of a like, who wants to be a part of this? Tammy, what else do you think about that?
Danielle, you said it so well, because I'm thinking also of other projects that involved a lot of other investigators, and sometimes those teams just don't come together. And you're just so busy, Danielle, and yet whatever you do, it's like 100%, right? And sometimes people are just overcommitted and they just can't put in, even though they're super interested in something, they just can't put in the time. And that's tough. That's tough, right? But it's as much as they're interested in the project, they can't put in the time, and that's hard to do because they just don't have the time to commit. But on this team, it just feels like because the project is so exciting, because it has so much meaning, I think that people are really committed. And I think as well, Danielle, I think that you actually helped to bring people together. That there were times where we were just kind of wondering how are these projects going to come together, and you as a leader were able to kind of bring the brainstorming session together in a way that you were able to build consensus and at the same time make decisions that didn't leave people out. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a good amount of team building as well in there. So, I give you a lot of credit for that.
Oh.
So
Thank
do
you
you
both.
still have the same group that you started with, or has there been some attrition and some, entry, and did that just happen organically, naturally, or were there certain people you said this isn't going to work? Um, I'm just curious, like maybe it's too early, it's new, so everybody's still excited. I'm wondering if it there's gotten to a point where some people's excitement has worn off and they shouldn't be part of the team anymore.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll mention it's not really that new in the sense that, I mean, it's newer than my projects that have been going on for 20 years, but I think we got the funds in 2013. So we essentially had 2 years to collect pilot data and put in a grant, and this will be approaching the end of our second year. So, and I'm trying to think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, but I think it's still all the same individuals. So we haven't lost anyone, right? Which I actually, again, think speaks so highly of this group. I mean, I will also, to be fair, the conditions were set up to have people who are committed because if you think of who's leading each of these projects and these cores, they're other center directors who tends to end up in center directors and leadership positions, people who, are understand how to commit to things, how to get them done, get them done on time, are used to working on teams. And so a lot of those conditions were right. So I don't think we've lost anybody per se. We've rearranged some of the projects. And I think that's happened pretty organically and more recently. But if anything, actually, what we've done is we've gained folks
You
because
have
we've
gained
hired
folks,
people and new
Danielle.
people have come
With the
along and
new
other people say, "Can you get
recruitments, Danielle's a magnet for talent. So we've actually gotten like really talented early career faculty. They're like ready and just ready to go. They've got such great ideas. And I think that adds to the excitement is that word joy that Ralph brought up. I mean, they really raise the level. I'm old and I'm like, whoa, I better like really get my game up here because they are super good, Danielle. I would just say like Jill and Marilyn, I'm like, okay, I could like get my reading done here. They've got great ideas and they're super sharp.
Yeah, so we've gained folks. We haven't lost any yet. Although, I
Mhm.
mean, I will say, so as to not give the impression that everything is always, easy and smooth sailing. I definitely have been on projects where, I've had to have hard conversations with folks about, you know, is this a good fit? And where teams have changed and, we've had to replace some team members and those kind of things. And that's, I think, also part of leading projects and leading initiatives is being able to have those hard conversations in ways that are, non-confrontational. People always say to me, like, I hate conflict. How do you deal with those things? And I say, well, I don't think of it as conflict. I think of it as like, we have to have conversations about these things because if there's, everybody's playing roles and their expectations and they're not coming together, like, I want to understand where are the barriers? Are there things I could do to better support you? And sometimes you just realize, actually, this isn't going to be a good fit. And, then you have to have those conversations as well. And it has always resulted in a more positive outcome because when there's not a great fit, for someone on a team too, then usually nobody's happy with that situation. And so if you ultimately kind of can't put in place some things to rectify that, then it's a good outcome when you realize and just acknowledge, hey, this isn't working, and let's all move forward.
I think being a psychologist is key. Yeah, that helps a lot. But I don't have to hug up all the time now. Thank you.
So I want to just follow up on the themes around different disciplines, different specialties. So, we've already heard about how you are all working together across these different fields. Now, how do you encourage this collaboration? How do you facilitate communication such that people from these different fields and specialties are able to, work together effectively? And then with people with so many different ideas and perspectives, like how have you worked to prioritize those things as you've been planning your grant?
So one of the things that I I think about as it, for example, most recently we were putting together a specific aims page, so a kind of, a short one pager about the project. And so you have everyone working in their own discipline, right? Tammy's leading hers on digital phenotyping, and the neuroimaging group is leading theirs, and the genomics group is leading theirs. And and then, when I read them, I try to read them from the lens of, you know, do I understand like why this is important? And sometimes actually it probably helps and I'm better at it when I'm not reading my own area, right? The project genomics that's in my own area. But I think about that with my own research too. I think a lot about how I love writing. And so like how do you write and talk to different audiences? And folks who've heard me give talks know that I frequently start with a shot of the book Start with Why, the cover, and say, the whole idea that, we have to keep in mind and to convince other people, whether you're writing a grant or giving a talk or, why is this important? And so like, when I read one of the projects, I was like, this sounds really cool, but I actually don't know what we're going to get from it at the end of it. Like, how is this going to relate to the theme of precision medicine? Like, how is this going to get us closer to improved patient care? And so I sort of see that as part of my role as I try and step back and go, okay, on each of these projects, like, is it clear what we're going to get from the end of it? And we all actually even wrote our projects. I said beforehand, think about like what is coming out of your projects. What are you sharing with the other projects? Like, what's the deliverable? And what are you getting from the other projects? And what do you need from the other projects too? Because we have to show we're working together. And so, and I'll tell you, when I read the individual projects, there were some that were more understandable than others. And then I went back to one of the groups and said, like, okay, I don't really get like what we're gonna get at the end of this. And they went, oh, okay, yeah, we were kind of in the weeds of like the methods. They came back and I was like, I get it now. Yep, this is really cool. And so I feel like it's having those kind of conversations. And in fact, I know from talking to colleagues over the years, they're sometimes like, some of the grants that like they have the best chances of getting funded are when they're partnered with people from a different field, because then when you're reading the grant, like it's not somebody who's like embedded in your area, and so they can see more of those big picture questions. You've usually got the details of the science, right? But that big picture of like, is somebody else getting it? I actually think that it can be beneficial that we're all coming from different areas too. And I've played a lot of that role right now just because I'm cognizant of I'm asking everybody to write their project, specific aims and all those kind of things. So, but I think at some point we'll all start reading each other's projects so everybody can be giving that feedback too. Thoughts?
This is what it's like to work with Danielle. I'm sorry, but it's like working with a master here, and you're getting feedback from someone who's got so much experience. I've got this smile on my face because I'm like, yeah, that was the feedback Danielle gave me. So one of the things that she said, I guess, about my project was, and so who's going to do this next step, Tammy, of how you're your project is going to be integrated. How are you going to integrate all of your data with all of these other different types of data? And I was like, oh, gee, Danielle, what a great question. That's for another core. Is that really my job? Isn't that the computational core or something? But she asks all of us to kind of stretch and go to the next step. So it's really kind of thinking about the connections that we have with other projects. So I'm sorry, Nancy, but
No,
there.
no, so I'm just kind of, so basically, like, Danielle, you take the high altitude view, why do we care about this? But you're trusting the individual leads or whatever you call them for the specific, content expertise. You have to trust them on that. And that's why you're getting really
Exactly.
good people. Yeah.
Yes. I am in a sense trusting that, I mean, my work is closer to Tammy's, so she's maybe not the best example, but like the model organism core, right? This is a really good person who's well funded, who's at an amazing place in his career, and so I like I'm gonna trust that this science is, that and I think that's how you work appropriately with faculty colleagues, right? It's and that's how I've always liked to work is that mix of like I can help with some of those big picture things, but at the end of the day, Tammy is an exceedingly smart, capable person, as are all these project leads, right? Like they deserve the freedom to run with their projects. And so, and you have to trust in that and give people that too. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to work with you if you're trying to micromanage.
And with these projects and these cores, were there others you considered and opted not to use, or how did you choose these?
Yeah, it's interesting. It came together fairly organically from the beginning, from when we first put in the application, a couple years ago. I think in part because Tammy and I actually knew each other, before either of us were on faculty here at Rutgers. And so many of us there's been such tremendous growth in addiction over the last 5 years that lots of us are new. Running the RARC, I spent the first year literally going into like all these. I mean, I think I met with like 50 people when I interviewed for a whole year for this position. So then I got here and I kind of think of my first year as like it was like the whirlwind, the tour to get to know folks and to try and understand who's here, what are they working on, where are the pockets of excellence, where are the centers where we've got a lot of expertise. And so then it just sort of seemed natural, right? That there, I mean, it's not like this is any revolutionary idea. I have to be like, oh, genomics, that's a hot area. Imaging, that's a hot area, right? Digital technologies, that's a hot area. We just happen to have expertise and all these great people, and we wanted to work together. So it was kind of you know, a real natural and easy mechanism. And we were fortunate that the chancellor also was like, yeah, this sounds great. Let's do it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your expertise and enthusiasm with our community here. Um, I learned a ton from this conversation, and I'm sure all of our listeners and viewers have as well. And thanks for also modeling, Tammy and Danielle, the real potential that effective team science research can pursue through what you've offered to us today.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And Tammy, thank you for joining me here for the conversation today too. And hopefully in a couple years we can come back and tell you about all of our progress on the Center of Excellence grant.
I was just going to say how fun that would be a couple of years out to sort of look at these two phases and see what lessons have been learned and the success you've achieved given this strong foundation that you've been able to cultivate. So thank you.
Fingers crossed. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and best of luck. Clearly you are well on your way to future success.
Yeah.
And I also just want to thank all our listeners for joining us today and attending this virtual team science seminar. And if you liked what you heard, what you learned, we encourage you to please share the recording with others. And we hope that you'll join us with future seminars in the series. And for recordings of other seminars in the series, other information about the Team Science Core, including how to request a Team Science consultation, please go to the NJAX website and visit the Team Science Core page. So thank you again.
Thank you.